The alien general snarled as the image flickered onto the war table. The feed showed a small human child, maybe 7 Earth years old, happily chasing what looked like a fluorescent, spined lizard across the black sands of Krogax-4, a world so hostile that most species required armored suits just to survive 10 minutes outside. The lizard hissed, turned, and leapt at the child's face with claws extended. The human boy laughed and swatted it away like a foam toy. The creature skittered off with a high-pitched squeal. General Kuroth of the Galactic Empire slammed a clenched talon into the table. "You're telling me this footage is real?" His adjutant, a smaller and far paler member of the Galactic's warrior caste, nodded nervously. "Confirmed, my general. It was captured by a perimeter drone 2 cycles ago. Cross-checked against their species registry. The child's oxygen saturation levels were normal. No suit, no augmentations. It appears he was just playing." "On Krogax?" Kuroth growled. "The planet that sterilized half a battalion of my best warriors last cycle?" "Yes, General." "Get me the Terran ambassador. Now." The room cleared like a sandstorm had ripped through it. Kuroth stood alone with his thoughts, breathing slow and deliberate through his armored neck vents. His muscles tensed under his carapace, each joint twitching with agitation. He had long dismissed the Terrans, those furless bipeds from a backwater blue world, as nothing more than a statistical anomaly. Primitives with clever tools. Reckless enough to land on a battlefield bare-skinned, brutal enough to weaponize weather systems, and stupid enough to raise children without neural bonding. They had no shared hive mind. No grand ancestral archive. And yet, here they were. Playing on a death world. His death world. The hollow flicker of the human ambassador snapped him out of his silent fuming. "General Kuroth," said the soft, measured voice of Ambassador Jenna Ray. She wore the usual Terran diplomatic coat, a dark blue jacket with some kind of clan crest on the shoulder. Her face was unreadable, but her eyes danced like she already knew the answer to the question he hadn't asked yet. Kuroth didn't waste time. "What are your young doing on Krogax-4?" The ambassador didn't blink. "Picnic." Kuroth choked. "Picnic? That planet is categorized as a triple red biohazard zone by your own council." She raised a brow. "And it's marked restricted to Class 8 or higher by yours. But our colony there is legal under Article 17. You signed that clause 3 cycles ago. And as for biohazards, our immune systems adapt rather quickly. Especially in the younger generations." Kuroth narrowed his eyes. "You sent children to that Hell's Cape?" "No," she said, smiling faintly. "We didn't send them. They begged to go." A pause. "Begged?" "Yes. We call it extreme field learning. Build character, resilience. Exposure to difficult environments improves neuroplasticity and problem-solving skills. I believe one of your analysts referred to it as reckless biological gambling." Kuroth growled again. "This isn't about character. That child fought off a Krogaxian lizardhound bare-handed. He wasn't fighting. He thought it was a game. They grew up wrestling Earth alligators. Lizardhounds are just slower." The line buzzed with uncomfortable silence. Somewhere behind the ambassador, a human toddler could be heard giggling in the background. Kuroth snapped the feed off. He stood motionless, staring at the war table as it replayed the footage in a loop, the boy chasing the spiked reptile, laughing, then tripping into a nest of burrow wasps and casually brushing them off like glitter. For Kuroth, something fundamental shifted. It wasn't just confusion or fear. It was disbelief melting into something deeper, curiosity, perhaps. Or challenge. 3 decks below, in the observation chamber of the Galactic's Imperial ship Vorik Tal, the security team was arguing about the footage. "You know what this means," hissed Captain Trex. "If human children can survive a Category 8 death world without gear, what the hell are their adults capable of? Worse," muttered his second. "What if they don't even consider it dangerous anymore? What kind of creatures grow up thinking pain is play?" Trex replayed a clip, zoomed in on the child's hand. There were scratches, flesh torn, blood visible, but the boy hadn't flinched. No cry. No trauma. Just laughter. Trex had once seen a Growlnick's hatchling lose a leg to a sand eel on Vega Prime. It had taken 6 years of neural reconditioning before the youngling could walk near sand again. The humans? They built sandcastles beside lava vents and called it vacation. On Earth, no one was surprised by the footage when it leaked. "Well, that's little Jonah," said Dr. Kiara Weldon, head of the Earth Krogax Youth Field Program. "He always liked the red ones. Said they reminded him of his dog back home." When pressed, she shrugged. "We gave him a medkit and a camera drone. Honestly, I was more worried about sunburn." The news caused a minor diplomatic incident, mostly from the Growlnick's side. Galactic counselors from 11 other species called emergency meetings. One high-ranking Zitari minister fainted during a live briefing. Earth, on the other hand, responded by printing T-shirts. "Deathworld Day Camp, I wrestled a lizardhound and all I got was this shirt." Some even had bite marks printed on them. It became a meme. A marketing campaign. A movement. Within weeks, thousands of Terran families were signing up for similar expeditions. Deathworld resilience training became the hottest trend in youth development. Kuroth watched the chaos unfold from the observation bridge of his warship. He should have been furious. His Empire's intimidation strategy had just crumbled into interstellar mockery. But something else had taken root. A new mission. If Earth's children could treat one of the galaxy's deadliest planets like a jungle gym, what else had they been hiding? The first time Kuroth met a Terran child in person, it was not at a diplomatic summit or through a secured channel. It was when he touched down on Krogax himself, unannounced and unguarded. He landed near the valley the footage had come from, stepping out in full armored regalia, his energy halberd in one hand, environmental shield active. The heat warped the air, and the ground crunched with brittle bones of extinct species. Then he heard it, laughter. High-pitched, bubbling, careless. He followed it. Down a ridge. Past a black rock formation. And into a clearing filled with a dozen human children. They were climbing trees that secreted acid sap. Sliding down slopes where spiked worms tunneled beneath. One boy was wearing a snake like a scarf. A girl was using a beetle the size of a briefcase as a footstool while she drank from a recycled juice pouch. They spotted him. A hush fell. Then one of the boys stepped forward, eyes wide. "Whoa! Are you a space warlord?" Kuroth blinked. "I am General Kuroth of the Growlnick's Empire. You are trespassing on a restricted zone under Galactic ordinance." "Cool," the boy interrupted. "Wanna play tag?" "Tag? You're it." The child slapped his leg and took off running. The others screamed with delight and scattered like chaos given form. Kuroth stood frozen. His visor flickered with confusion. His armor pinged a dozen environmental hazard warnings. A swarm of sting bugs buzzed past his head. Then, without quite realizing why, he chased them. Back aboard the Voraktal, the bridge crews stared at the incoming biofeed. "Sir, the General's armor feed just cut out. And his vitals are spiking? Combat mode?" "No. Adrenaline. Joy response. Elevated dopamine. Laughter?" The whole room went silent. Then the screen showed Kuroth, this terrifying, battle-hardened alien general, covered in dust and scratches, laughing as a group of human children piled onto him, yelling, "We got the warlord! We win!" The youngest girl proudly planted a sticker that read, "Honorary Jungle Beast," onto his chest plate. And he didn't stop her. He just laid back and said, "Rematch. Tomorrow." "You played with them?" The voice on the encrypted line crackled with disbelief. High Matron Threxia of the Growlnick's Elder Council leaned so far forward into the holofeed that her elongated skull seemed to emerge through the projection. General Kuroth, armor scratched and visibly marked with dozens of neon-colored victory stickers, stood in his war chamber surrounded by dozens of data streams, all paused on the same frame, A human child perched on his shoulder, waving at the camera. They offered challenge. I accepted, Kuroth replied, folding his arms. Challenge? Threxia hissed. They smeared goo on your helmet and tied your legs together with vines. It was effective ambush. You're humiliating the Empire, she snarled. These humans are making a game of our deadliest worlds, and you're encouraging them. Kuroth's eyes narrowed, his tone lowering like a storm. I've seen your most elite hunters drop dead from Krogak's acid spores in minutes. I watched a 5-year-old girl tie her shoes in a nest of those spores without so much as a cough. Tell me, what is more dangerous? The Deathworld, or the species that no longer fears it? Threxia paused. She blinked her inner lids, disturbed. You believe they've adapted? I believe we've underestimated them. She leaned back slowly, saying nothing. Kuroth tapped his claw on the console. And we're not the only ones. Across the galaxy, the footage had spread like fire in a methane field. The Galactic Council called an emergency summit on planetary classification standards. Species from every quadrant demanded clarification. Were humans a Deathworld species? Or were Deathworlds now considered training grounds by their kind? Worse, dozens of Deathworlds previously considered off-limits had now been reopened under human contracts. Terran explorers, anthropologists, families began filing permits to explore places once marked as biological no-go zones. Some saw opportunity. Others saw madness. But one race, the Krothan, saw it as provocation. The Krothan were a species of heavily armored insectoids known for one thing: planetary domination. With a hive structure built on survival of the fittest, they had conquered 7 Deathworlds and sterilized dozens more. Their queen, Izark V, took personal offense to the idea that humans could even step on a world the Krothan had once lost entire legions to. To them, Deathworlds weren't just environments, they were territories. Badges of honor. And Earth, by daring to treat one like a playground, had declared war. The message came in brutal and simple. Withdraw your spawn from Krogak's 4. Or we will remove them ourselves. Ambassador Jenna Ray barely blinked when she read the message. Well, they're bugged again. She tapped her stylus against her teeth, looking out the transparent dome of Earth's orbital embassy. General Kuroth is still on Krogax, isn't he? Her aide nodded. He's, helping the children build what they call a tree fort stronghold. The ambassador raised an eyebrow. Please tell me he didn't let them give it a name. He did. It's called Fort Laserpoop. Of course it is. She exhaled. Well then. We have a problem. Kuroth felt the rumble before he saw the ship. He stood atop a charred ridge, one hand on his halberd, the other shading his eyes as the Krothan war crucible Varzek descended through the roiling red clouds of Krogax 4. It didn't bother with stealth or protocol. Its engines screeched across the valley like a knife dragged through metal. The children gathered behind Kuroth in loose clusters. One of them, a boy named Zack, narrowed his eyes and muttered, That ship looks angry. Another, the smallest girl, Lonnie, tugged Kuroth's clawed hand. Is it another game? Kuroth didn't answer immediately. His visor pinged a warning. 8 Krothan warrior pods launched from the belly of the ship. They landed like thunder, kicking up clouds of ash and bone. No, he said finally, stepping in front of the children. This is not a game. The Krothan emerged in their full war state, pulsing exosuits, clawed arms, neuro-scorching spears humming with deadly energy. The largest, their hive knight, stepped forward and pointed a limb at the children. Remove the spawn, it barked. This world is not for weaklings. Kuroth replied before the children could speak. This world, he said coldly, has already chosen its apex. The Krothan hissed in rage. And in that moment, before any weapon was fired, before a single threat turned physical, one of the children stepped forward. Jonah. The boy from the original footage. He reached into his backpack and pulled out a juice box. Hey, Bugs, he said, sipping casually. Bet you can't climb the fart tree in under 10 seconds. The Crothan froze. The what? Zack pointed to a towering black tree covered in steaming, sulfurous moss. It smells like eggs and burps. That's why we call it that. Jonah tossed the juice box aside, crouched like a sprinter, and launched himself up the trunk. Within seconds he was halfway up. Lonnie followed. Then Zack. Then the rest. Even the youngest scrambled up the blistering bark like it was a playground jungle gym. The Crothan watched, stunned. This is what you fear? Kuroth said darkly. Children who laugh in the face of death? The Hive Knight snarled. We do not fear them. We will eradicate them. Kuroth took a step forward. Then you'll have to go through me. The Crothan surged. But Kuroth was ready. It was not a battle in the traditional sense. There were no fleets. No orbital strikes. Just dirt, claws, muscle, and instinct. The Crothan lunged first, but Kuroth intercepted them, his halberd sparking against the first drone's spear. He spun low, cracked the knee joint of another, then roared a command back to the children. To the tree. Stay high. But they didn't just stay. From their perch in Fort Laser Poop, the children began throwing things. Vines. Mud bowls. Bottles filled with fermented insect repellent. Stink bombs of their own design. Jonah hurled a rock that hit one of the drones directly in the faceplate. That's for calling us weak. The drone reeled. Kuroth, laughing now, used the distraction to flip his halberd into a dual-blade mode. The children's chaos created the perfect misdirection. The Crothan were trained for war, but not for improvised disorder. Not for unpredictability. Not for play. One by one, the Crothan began to falter. Disoriented. Angry. Confused. Then came the kicker. Lonnie dropped something big and glowing from the tree's highest branch. A fusion battery, emptied, but still volatile. The explosion wasn't lethal. But it was humiliating. Covered in ash, drenched in human-made stink concoctions, and psychologically battered by what felt like a militarized daycare center, the Crothan finally retreated. As their warship lifted off, Kuroth stood in silence, breathing hard. The children swarmed him with cheers. We did it! You were so cool! Did you see Jonah's juice box fake out? He knelt, breathing deep, armor scorched and half covered in glitter stickers. You were warned to run, he said. Zack grinned. Running's boring. Kuroth nodded slowly. So is fear. Back on the Gralnick's capital world, the footage sent shockwaves across the Empire. Not only had a feared general fought alongside Terran children, he'd won. With their help. Using their chaos, their games, their creativity. Phyrexia watched in horror as the Galactic newsfeed played clips of the battle on loop. The headline beneath blared. Terran toddlers take down Crothan war drones, General K helps. The worst part? They had made it into a cartoon. A holo-series called Laser Poop Force, the Deathworld Defenders, debuted the next cycle. Kuroth, animated in exaggerated hero proportions, voiced by a surprisingly popular comedian, was now the accidental face of human-alien play integration programs. He hadn't authorized it. He secretly didn't mind. Ambassador Jenna Ray leaned back in her office chair, watching the broadcast as she sipped coffee. We offered them more, she murmured. They offered us tag. Her aide nodded slowly. What do we do now? She tapped the screen where Kuroth stood with the children, arms raised like a victorious coach. We do what humans always do, she said. We adapt. The sun never truly set on Krogax 4. Instead, it bled into a crimson dusk, painting the skies with ominous streaks of orange and sulfur green. It was the kind of light that warned predators to wake and prey to hide. But Fort Laserpoop was awake. Inside the makeshift stronghold of twisted trees, plasmacharred stones, and duct-tape solar blankets, the Terran children were drawing up battle plans, with crayons. On a flattened sheet of alloy Kuroth had salvaged from a fallen Crothan drone, they had sketched what looked like a lopsided fortress labeled Operation Death Hug. You sure this will work? Zack asked, chewing on the end of his marker. It has to, Lonnie replied, adjusting a bug antenna headband she had fashioned from vine and shell. General Kuroth stood nearby, arms crossed, listening. He had said nothing for half an hour, letting them strategize. Watching. Learning. In his species, younglings didn't speak until 5 cycles old, and most didn't plan until their second decade. These Terran spawn were different. Chaotic. Illogical. And somehow brilliant. They had beaten elite Crothan shock troops with mud, bad smells, and raw nerve. But now came the real test. Because the galaxy had seen the footage. And someone out there hadn't taken it as a joke. The warning came not from space, but from beneath. A deep vibration. Barely perceptible at first. Like a distant tremor under the soles. Jonah looked up from his moss pillow. Do you feel that? Zack nodded. Feels like a T-Rex, but underground. Kuroth dropped to one knee, pressing a clawed hand against the ash-coated soil. His visor's seismic readings spiked instantly. Tunnels, he growled. Boring at combat velocity. Non-Crothan. Faster. Smarter. He stood, spine rigid. It's the Varkari. The name silenced the children. Even Lonnie stopped mid-scribble. I thought they were extinct. Kuroth's jaw clenched. Only in polite company. He pulled up a galactic file. The hollow spun into a sharp, angular creature, 6 limbs, hardened crystal hide, and a maw lined with concentric rings of teeth. They don't fight like soldiers, he said grimly. They infiltrate. Assimilate. Then adapt. They've been watching your games, and now they're ready to play their own. Wait, Jonah said, stepping forward. Are you saying they're coming, here? The ground shook again. No, Kuroth answered, his eyes hardening. They're already beneath us. When the first Varkari breached the surface, it didn't roar. It whispered. A chittering static, like a corrupted transmission. The earth cracked open and a creature slithered out, its body shifting color with every breath, blending into the background like oil on water. It stood on 6 limbs, flexing as if testing gravity, and then it spoke, without sound, but into their minds. Playtime. Over. The children screamed. Kuroth stepped forward and fired his halberd's energy arc, but the Varkari dodged, curling around the blast like smoke. A second one emerged behind him, then a third. These things, he muttered, aren't here to scare us. They're here to learn us. Zack grabbed his sister's hand. So what do we do? Kuroth didn't answer. Because the answer wasn't his to give. In orbit, Ambassador Jenna Ray's console lit up red. Krogax just went dark, her aide whispered. EMP? She asked. No. Signal scrambling. Someone down there doesn't want us watching. Jenna stood, fingers clenched into fists. Get me the Galactic Council. Emergency vote. Her aide hesitated. But you know the rules. No off-world military intervention unless it's an extinction-level event. Jenna's jaw set. And who decides that? The aide gulped. The same people we're calling. On Krogax 4, the forest had gone silent. Even the sulfur vents had stopped bubbling. Jonah, Zack, and Lonnie stood behind Kuroth, who now faced a semicircle of Varkari. Their bodies shimmered, glitching like bad camouflage, and their eyes glowed not with rage, but calculation. They're studying our responses, Kuroth said. Even now, they're writing us into their evolutionary archive. So, if we fight, they get smarter? Lonnie asked. Yes. What if we don't fight? Kuroth blinked. They still get smarter. Jonah frowned. Then we gotta give them something new. Zack's face lit up. Something they can't copy. Kuroth was about to ask what, when the children ran forward, toward the Varkari. He roared. No. But they didn't attack. They danced. Lonnie began skipping in erratic patterns, waving her arms like spaghetti. Jonah somersaulted and shrieked in gibberish. Zack rolled in a circle, flinging glitter from his backpack like sacred ash. The Valkyrie paused. They watched, their heads tilted at unnatural angles. Jonah grinned mid-cartwheel. They can't copy nonsense. They don't get it. Kurotich's mind whirled. He realized they were right. The Valkyrie weren't built to understand play. Not randomness. Not imagination. Not behavior without survival logic. To them, unpredictability was error. And error was lethal. Within seconds, the children turned Fort Laserpoop into a theater of chaos. They screamed war cries from cartoons. They slapped mud pies into their own faces. Lonnie built a tower of slime-covered stones and called it King Farchula's throne. Kurotich, still reeling, was pulled in. Join US! Zack yelled. Warlord tag mode! Something broke inside the general. Pride, maybe? Ego. Whatever it was, he dropped his halberd and lunged after the kids, roaring nonsense and flailing his limbs like a monstrous crab. The Valkyrie reeled. Their minds tried to process what they were seeing, to catalog the patterns. There were none. The data had no rules, no consistency, no learning path. Their neural sync loops overloaded. Then, one by one, they glitched, stumbled, and fell. From orbit, emergency satellites picked up the seismic event. It was brief, a pulse wave that spread in a perfect circle around Fort Laserpoop, flattening half the ridge in a 10-mile radius. Then, nothing. The surface returned to stillness. Except for a single audio signal. It was a child's voice, laughing. Followed by Kurotich shouting, "Tag, your IT!" Then silence again. The Valkyrie were gone. Not dead. Not defeated in war. Just confused out of existence. Retreated into their tunnels. Vanished from orbit. Like their minds couldn't process the idea of species whose young chose madness as strategy. Kurotich collapsed against a tree, panting, covered in mud and joy. Zack flopped beside him. That was awesome! Lonnie climbed up and hung a news sign on the fort. Welcome to Chaos School! Kurotich read it with a quiet pride. They will return, he said. Jonah nodded. Let them. We got more dances. A week later, the Galactic Council reconvened. There were no debates. No procedural delays. Krogax 4 was officially reclassified, not as a Deathworld, but as a Terran-adapted extreme youth resilience zone. Several species protested. Others requested access. Earth declined. Instead, they invited volunteers to attend a field logic disruption training program. Admission was limited. Curriculum: mudball tactics, fort building, improvisational combat theater, and advanced nonsense theory. The program had a waitlist 7,000 systems long. Kurotich returned home a hero. But not to the Growlniks. To Earth. He had become a guest lecturer. Specialty: play as warfare. He stood on a Terran Enhanced Defense Doctrine stage, still partially armored, facing hundreds of human children. My species once believed strength was in the claw, the shield, and the scream of battle, he said. But your kind showed me something stronger. He paused. Uncertainty. You wield it like a weapon. Not because you are fearless, but because you are curious. Applause erupted. In the front row, Jonah held up a sign. Chaos School never closes. Kurotich smiled. And then a glitter bomb exploded over the crowd. Because Zack had forgotten it in his backpack. Again. It was said that the Valkyrie hive shrieked for 9 planetary rotations after their encounter on Krogax 4. Not out of pain, but out of confusion. Hive nodes collapsed under the weight of paradox. Memory cores filled with loop sequences of children skipping through lava fields, of warlords playing tag, of the phrase, laser poop, written in at least 4 languages. They didn't return to Krogax. Not ever. Their great queen, the one who devoured star systems, declared Earth a conceptual hazard. The Valkyrie would no longer engage with Terrans until their species Stopped inventing things like rainbow tactical glitter or deploying dancing as combat. The galaxy adjusted accordingly. And chaos? Chaos became policy. Fort Laser Poop was decommissioned 3 months later, not due to attack or failure, but because the children decided they wanted to build a bigger one. In orbit, Kuro-th insisted on overseeing the construction personally. Will it be military grade? One Earth engineer asked. The general looked offended. It will be mudball-proof. That requires greater rigor. The new station, nicknamed Fort Uncertainty, orbited Krogax at a low altitude. It was half research lab, half playground, and 100% Terran absurdity. It had slides, anti-gravity hop zones, a scream-activated elevator, and a snack bar that served both human fruit chews and Growlnick's bone broth. Diplomats from 27 species applied for visitation, but entry required passing a newly developed aptitude test. It was one question long. If your enemy attacks with joy, what do you do? Most failed. Some tried to reply with logic. Others wrote essays. Only one species got it right. A small amphibious race from Sector Theta 5 submitted a single answer, a video of their hatchlings throwing pudding at each other while yelling made-up songs. They were admitted immediately. Meanwhile, back on Earth, Kuro-th's popularity exploded. He was given honorary Terran citizenship. A parade was held in Chicago where schoolchildren rode on floats shaped like alien warships covered in foam stars and pipe cleaners. He was gifted a custom cape made from recycled juice pouches. He wore it to every lecture. And he began to change. Subtly, but surely. He laughed more easily. He no longer corrected grammatical errors, he embraced them. He took to ending his speeches with knock-knock jokes, despite not fully understanding them. He no longer flinched when children pounced on him with surprise hugs or mud bombs. He even wrote a book. Tactics of the Young, Lessons in Asymmetrical Absurdity. Now required reading in 3 military academies and 1 comedy writing school. One day, while walking the outer edge of Fort Uncertainty with Jonah, Zach, and Lonnie, all now a little taller, a little wiser, but still joyfully unpredictable, Kuro-th stopped and looked out over the stars. Why do your kind do this? He asked. Do what? Lonnie asked, hopping along the edge of a gravity railing. Laugh in the face of danger. Turn horror into play. Make nonsense into defense. Jonah smiled. You ever hear of the playground rule? I have heard many rules. Most end in death. This one's better, Zach said. It's what Earth kids say. If someone gets left out, the game isn't fun anymore. So we change the rules until everyone can play. Kuro-th was silent. Then, softly, even your enemies? Especially them, Jonah said. Kuro-th felt something ache in his chest. In his culture, strength was inherited. Power was claimed through pain. Children were taught to fear before they learned to walk. But these Terrans, they taught fun as strategy, inclusion as warfare, and chaos as a survival mechanism. He was beginning to suspect that it wasn't the Terrans who had been weak all along. It was everyone else who had been too afraid to change. That night, Fort Uncertainty was hit with its most unexpected visitor yet. A lone shuttle drifted into orbit. No weapons. No broadcast. It bore the sigil of the Crothan Empire, the ones humiliated during the original Mud War. Kuro-th went to meet them. The hatch opened, and out stepped a young Crothan drone. It was small. Not even battle-aged. It clutched something in its pincer-like claws. A hand-drawn sign. I want to enroll. Kuro-th stared. In what? In Chaos School, the drone said. Lonnie popped up behind him. You brought your own stickers? The drone nodded. She grinned. You're in. Months passed. And something shifted across the galaxy. Where once empires drew lines and postured with dreadnoughts, now they began drawing playgrounds. Galactic conflict gave way to curiosity. Training programs were redesigned, not just for strength, but for resilience of mind. Strategy rooms began featuring art corners, Tactical briefings included icebreakers and laughter studies. Diplomatic summits adopted recess periods. And the phrase, laserpoop protocol, became a real part of interspecies defense dialogue, symbolizing unpredictable, disruptive action that forced stronger, smarter foes to think sideways. Human children were recruited as consultants. Even the Valkyrie, long silent, sent a message. It contained no words. Just a video. A single one of their younglings, spinning in circles while wearing a Terran-style fruit hat and singing. "We don't get it, but we'll try." The galaxy, for the first time in centuries, laughed together. And as for Kuro-TH? He returned to Krogax only once more. Older now. Slower. But his heart still wild. He walked the same ridge where he'd once stood, armor gleaming in the ash storms. Fort Laserpoop was long gone, replaced by a bronze plaque and a strangely shaped tree with a tire swing hanging off one melted branch. He ran his claw along the plaque. It read, "Here, a warlord learned to play." He smiled. From the clearing, a voice called, "Tag! You're it!" He turned, and saw Jonah. Older now. A teenager. Stronger. Faster. And behind him, a whole new generation of wild Terran children. Running. Laughing. Challenging the galaxy once more. Kuro-TH didn't hesitate. He ran after them.